Thank you, Deepti, for your kind words. I'm really happy to be here in your midst this afternoon, share a few of my thoughts, and before I do that, I just wanted to share with you some of our foreign friends about our company. Larsen & Toubro is a large engineering organization which started off in the year 1938 with two Danish engineers who came to India, and they stayed during the World War II, and they could not, for some reason, could not go back, and they settled here and formed this particular company, Larsen & Toubro, and still the name is carrying on, and we are in the 75th year of operations, and we are predominantly into the construction, the EPC contracts. We are into roads, bridges, infrastructure. See, such are those people who have visited Delhi, Hyderabad, Bangalore, and all these airports were being built by us. By us means Larsen & Toubro for the customers as such, and we are predominant in the other metallurgical as well as in other areas like the hydel power projects, the hydrocarbons, and we are also present in the Middle East in a big way, mostly in Oman, Saudi, UAE, Qatar, and other places as such. And about 20% of our company's turnover comes from the international business. And apart from the main company, we have got about subsidiary associate companies which are related with our business. About 167 entities are there, all mix of small, medium, big firms, etc. Nevertheless, the audit function has to be carried out in all these locations, in all these sites, and also as far as the manufacturing is concerned, we have got in 19 locations. We have got project sites about 200, and a couple of service units are also there. So we do the audit almost for about 200 audits in a year, and our things are bifurcated into 3 zones. The central zone, which is the main office, which is in Powai. Some of you will be visiting tomorrow, and we have the construction business, the headquarters at Chennai, where about 20 of our staff are working, and here about 20 people, and recently we have started the Middle East zone, where about 4 people are presently there, catering to that particular market. In all about 45, and including some of the subsidiary associate companies, we have another about 15 people are there. So with this strength, we are able to carry on with the activities of the audit, and we also submit our reports and make our presence to the audit committee periodically, and tell them of what we have done, what are the significant observations, take their views also, and even the audit plan is approved by them. So that is the process we follow in a nutshell. And we have a mix of, in our department, a mix of chartered accountants, we have got cost accountants, we have got CISA and DISA qualified people, and we have quite a few engineers also, because we felt that being an engineering company, we need to have a perspective of the engineering side also. Though the numbers are not large, but still our endeavor is to increase their strength so that we are able to understand the technicalities. Unless we understand the business well and the techniques which are followed, the technology which is being followed, it will be difficult for us to do the audit. But nevertheless, with the strength what we have experienced, mix of experienced and qualified, semi-qualified people, as well as recently qualified youngsters who are good in technology. See, we always believe that the people who are coming, the freshers, are far more intelligent as far as the technology is concerned. So they are able to do much faster the work, they embrace the technology, etc., etc. So that's why we also gave the idea training to most of the people, and they in fact liked it, and they have come out with good practices based on the data analytics, which is a welcome sign. And I'll tell you, without the technology it will be very difficult in today's parlance to carry out the audit, and even taking the sample becomes really difficult. As we need to select the sample, we need to do the audit in a manner which is acceptable to and we ourselves, first of all, we should be convinced that yes, this is a good tool, and we are able to get some information, and based on that we are able to frame our ideas. So that is in a way that's good. See, when the whole world is turning towards technology, even the construction, whatever I was talking to you, 30 years before what they were doing, and today with the technology they are able, with less number of workmen, with a lot of mechanization, they are able to do it. So naturally in all field, whether it is in accounting or in audit every field. The technology has to be embraced in our own way. We need to do that, and there are good technology experts are there, which are available. The tools are available, so we need to definitely do that. With that, it will be very helpful for in our day-to-day operations as such. Coming back to our department as such, we have a structured program. In fact, we finalized the audit plan in the beginning of the year. Of course, there are some changes, some interim changes also will be there based on the actual requirements, and certain inconvenience will be there for the auditee to take up the audit, because in the project it becomes really difficult. Suppose the project is shut for some time, it may be difficult for us to go there or even approach that particular place and take up the audit. So we inform them well in advance. We have pre-audit meetings are there, which is conducted. The senior people also attend the meeting, and we tell them what are the previous year issues are there which is open. Also then what are the things which we are going to see, and also seek their views on what are the pain areas in which we can always help them out as such. And then we carry out the audit, and a post-audit meeting is there, and we submit a draft report. The draft report is gone through by the people, and then they give their comments on these reports, because we don't want to release any report without their auditees' acceptance. Otherwise it becomes something which is not doable. No, we will not be able to do that. And later on what we do is we submit the final report to the management, and after about 2-3 months we follow up with them on the open issues. What are the issues which have been told, whether we will be able to, whether they have addressed those issues, and the status report is obtained. And we are also an ISO. Our department has got the ISO certification. We do on a yearly basis. They come for the audit, and that way it helps us quite a lot to keep our things clean and neat. That's what we expect at the end of the day. And we also give a lot of training to our people, not only on the business side, but also on the like this idea or the use of the tools, and on the subject matter also we just give them. So with that we are able to motivate the people and keep them in good spirit, so that they carry out the audit and give a very quality report. That's what we expect at the end of the day. And follow-up measures are all being done, and annually we also meet all together about in one location. We spend about 2-3 days, share our thoughts, and we call experts to share the knowledge. That way the training and development is a continuous process as such. And we have in the company we have developed a system called the study circle. Meetings are there, and even the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India have encouraged our members, the industry members working in the industry, to form small groups. And then see, internally itself a lot of experts are there which we can share the knowledge. That also helps us in the CPE hours. We call it as a continuous professional education, and every chartered accountant, a member of our profession, has to undergo about a minimum number of hours. The technical training is required. It's not required to go for any external programs. Even internally with this study circle we are able to do that. We call industry experts, the subject experts, to come and address the people. So it helps us quite a lot. So I can go on be talking about our operations as such, but this is what I just thought I can communicate to our fellow friends from Angola as well as from Canada, that we have been always taking care of the tools, etc., ensure that the current trends which are being followed elsewhere is also embraced. And apart from that, we also have got our industry experts are there in Mumbai as well as in Chennai. We also visit them, and we also invite them to share their knowledge and how do they do it, so that we are all in as a common community, we are in a common platform as such. So with these few words, I would like to once again thank Deepji for giving me an opportunity, and we wish this program all success, and I'm very sure that you would have been benefited by the experience of many people sharing their knowledge in a common platform. I wish Deepji and his company and Sama all the best and good luck. Thanks a lot.
Things aren't always what we think. Whatever we see first, we think, oh, this is this. So if you see 6 blind men, they go to observe an elephant. One feels the side and thinks the elephant is like a wall. One feels the tusk and thinks the elephant is like a spear. One touches the squirming trunk and thinks the elephant is like a snake. One feels the knee and thinks the elephant is like a tree. One touches the ear and thinks the elephant is like a fan. One grasps the tail and thinks it's like a rope. They argue long and loud, and though each was partly in the right, all were in the wrong. So what does this story, at least tell me? The story tells that in case I see data, and when I am talking about data, I am talking about large data. I am not talking about small data. I am not talking about 50 purchase orders. I am not talking about 200 employees. I am talking about vast number of employees. Okay. Now, the only caveat that I'll have that in the next 75 minutes what I speak might not necessarily pertain to the organization that I am presently working for, that is Larsen & Toubro. This is built up on the basis of my experimentation, so-called experimentation with data in the number of organizations that I worked with. Dibji has already enumerated. So it's not necessarily that this is the thing in my company. The data in my company is absolutely clean, and we do use this tool to give us an assurance that everything is continuing to be to be clean. And I'll sort of role play some of the conversations that probably we have with our senior management, and how difficult it becomes for us to analyze and actually give assurance to the management that everything is proper. So if you see this fable, it's an Indian fable. If you see very large data, if I am talking about purchase orders which are maybe 10 million purchase orders issued in a whole year. Now if I look at that particular data, the one thing is I'll give these slides to it's available with Dibji, so don't worry about taking down anything from the slides. It will be available to you. There's nothing which is classified. So what I'll do is, so if you see very large data and if it runs into millions of numbers, how is it possible for us to look at that data? One is it possible that I can do it manually? The answer, I think, most surely is no. We can't possibly look at that data manually. How do I ask intelligent questions to make sure that the data that we are able to analyze this data? Now you can keep on doing data analytics on how many purchase orders started with A number and how many started with 1 and how many started with 2. Those are also analysis of data, but they might not be meaningful data. Okay. The business also analyzes the same data, but as I keep saying, the business of business is to do business. The business of internal auditors is internal control. So whatever data analytics that we do must surround around or must focus upon what are the internal controls that are built around that particular data. For example, if my company has issued say 10 lakh purchase orders, so if I stratify that data into the values of the purchase order, now merely getting the values of the purchase order means nothing to anybody. It's just that I know that there were so many lakh, so many thousands of purchase order with this value, so many with lesser than that value, and so on and so forth till I reach the bottom of the data. What is the intelligence that I wish to throw into this? The intelligence that I wish to throw into this is to check it out with my authorization levels or my limits of authority or whatever word that is being used in each of our organizations. If I am able to match out this particular string of data, and I come to know that if there is a purchase order, if there is a particular level of say 30 lakhs for a particular purchase order, and I find that most of my purchase orders are in the range of 25 to 29 lakhs 99,999, then that tells me that there is some effort, or it gives me an indication, it gives me a direction for me to particularly go and look at those purchase orders and find out what's happening on those lines. How do we also use data analytics? I can tell you, we use it in some different ways as well. Now, if I make an observation, now when I analyze data or when I go to the actual location and I find that the goods received note is made with a delay, that means there was a delay in making the goods received note. What do I do as typical auditors? We say that there was a delay in preparation of goods received note from 1st January to 15th January, from say 1st May to 15th May, there was a delay of more than 17 days, and then I start classifying it that 17 days delay there were so many, 16 days delay there were so many, 50, and keep on doing it because we have Excels and IDEA and so many other tools. Now, is that enough? What is the response of the management? The management looks at this particular remark of this wonderful auditor that we have, and he says that Mr. So-and-so, who is the store in charge, was on leave during the month of May, because May is our vacation time, one of the vacation times I will say. So, this was that the guy was on leave, and therefore because he was on leave, the GRNs took time to make. Now, if I give this report to the management, what does the management learn from this? Nothing. He says, okay, there was a delay. That fellow says he was on leave. So what? An auditor also accepts that particular remark, and the matter is closed. Who has gained from this? I may have used data analytics and stratified the data and all those things, but who has gained from this? What we attempt to do now is to look at the larger issue. If I use data analytics for the whole year and find out that it is not only on that 1st to 15th, that it was only in that 1st to 15th of May I had a problem. Right through the year, there are 1 million goods received notes made, largely made within 2 or 3 days or 4 days or whatever is the acceptable time. It is only in these 15 days there was a delay. Now, because I am using data analytics, I have that extra wisdom to know upfront before I go to the location that it is only in these 15 days I have a problem, but right through the year I had no problem on the preparation of GR. That means that process is under control. However, for 15 days out of the 365, the company had a problem of delay. What does it suggest to the auditor? It suggests to the auditor that he can go there right up to that storekeeper and ask him that when you were on leave, who did your job? What's the answer? Nobody did this job. What is the consequence of that answer? The consequence of the answer was that there was a delay. Now when I put up this point to the management, I have to tell the management that this job of the storekeeper preparing the GR is such an important job for me, is such an important job for the company, because if our goods received notes don't get prepared on time, what are the consequences? The vendors don't get paid, the material can't be issued to production, or even if it is issued, it is done outside the books. Therefore, there is a compromise on controls, and therefore, and hence it is essential that local management puts in a process that to identify critical roles. One could be the store, identify critical roles, and then make sure that when such jobs are unmanned, which means the person is on leave, it should not be unmanned. You must have somebody who will double up, who will step up and say that, do the work, so that what was kept in control for 350 days is also kept in control for the 15 days that one poor store maker who went on leave. So the use of data analytics, in my opinion, is not just merely doing the analytics for the sake of it, but by asking ourselves intelligent questions, by trying to compare databases one and the other, like what we have done, and I'll give you some case studies of what exactly we were able to do, of trying to do what we call the relational database. Now, if I just look at the payroll data in isolation, of course, I can do a lot of relationship between the 1,000 fields that are available when a particular payroll gets processed. I can do some relationships between that as well. I can match the attendance record versus the payment made to a particular person. I can match whether a person who has just joined the company, whether he is getting some extreme allowances or some extraneous allowances. If I know I give my increment letters in my company in the month of July and August, July/August, then I know that my increments payments should come only in these 2 months. So I can look at data right through, right for 12 months and see whether there has been any payments being made other than these 2 months, you know. So there are different ways in which we could probably look at the data management as a concept. Okay. This is just a glimpse of data analytics. To my mind and to my limited experience, I would say that cleaning the data is one of the important steps. I'm sure in the last couple of days this has been discussed, but I feel that cleaning the data is one of the important steps of making sure that, because we all know garbage in and garbage out, and therefore if we do not clean the data in terms of, you know, sometimes zero values being coming or whatever. I mean, we all know the technique of, I'm sure Jairam has also explained it, and all of us are IDEA users or data analytics users, so we know, these concepts. But I feel that out of all the, inspecting we do, but cleaning is an important thing, because to the extent you clean the data up, your questions which you ask intelligently will also give you intelligent results. So the cleaning part of it is a very important view that I have taken as an important step before we plunge directly into data analytics. Modeling data is the other word that has really caught me on. Modeling the data means, in the sense, keep making patterns, trying to establish patterns about how that particular data has moved, how that data has, because that data is the past data, you see, it's not a futuristic data, it's a past, what has actually happened. And if we are able to model that data or classify that data or stratify that data or bring like to like together and then put them up and bunch them up together and then look at it from a holistic point of view, the answers that you get will be absolutely startling at times, not entirely startling, because we do get false positives, and I'll give you some examples of the false positives that we got, and that will ultimately, at sometimes make us laugh at ourselves. Arey, aisa bhi hota hai. I mean, does it happen like this as well? I mean, so false positives is the other thing that we need to take care of, and I'll talk about this a little later. So with the goal of highlighting useful information, the information obviously must be useful. Many times as auditors we get strayed, we stray into looking at data from a business angle. I keep telling myself, and therefore I keep telling my teams, that the business of business is to do business, the business of auditors is internal control. Whatever data analytics we are doing, don't look at it from a business angle, that sales can be increased from 12% to 14%, eastern region has increased from 8% to 12%, western is not doing so well, interior Maharashtra is doing well, rural, what do we do with, I mean, if it's a sales audit or something like that, it's okay, but generally don't get into, that's the principle I follow, right, wrong or otherwise, we can always discuss over a cup of tea, but I'm saying that the fundamental point is that whenever we are analyzing data, we must keep the bent of internal control right up front when we are looking at data. What is it that we are looking and analyzing data for? We are looking and analyzing data for making sure that the envisaged internal control, which the company has itself believed or made itself believe that these controls are in place, we must make sure that the pattern of the data which is emerging out of as a result of all transactions that happen in the company follow that particular internal control process, or if it deviates, to what extent it deviates, what is going to be the impact. Every deviation can't be an internal control lapse. I mean, if the impact is going to be high, if the impact is going to be recurring, If it is the impact is going to cause harm to the company, then it's an internal control lapse worth taking up to the management. But otherwise, just to say and pat myself on the back, saying that every internal control deviation is an issue, I don't think that is the issue. The issue is that we must look at significant deviations which have high impact or a strong possibility of recurrence. So that's my view on what actually happens. Now, before I get into a little bit of theory, if I am working in a company which has, say, 50,000 employees to be paid, I am working in SR, I am working in maybe LG, Samsung, I could be working in L&T, and I have 50,000 people to be paid salaries in the month. Okay? How do I start? Where do I start? Payroll is an easy example, so I think all of us apply. I'm sure that we apply idea first to payroll, because I believe it's the simplest way to start. Like we tell people when they want to start eating non-vegetarian, start with keema because it has no bones and it looks like a vegetable and you can start eating with that, you know. So when you start using any analytical tool, the easiest I feel is to use it in payroll, because that's the most place where you could get the maximum results. Now when I am looking at 50,000 employees which are needed to be paid, and if my management asks me that, look my friend, you have done the audit, what did you do in that audit? What do you think my answer is? What did I do in that audit? I looked at 50,000 people being paid month on month and month on month. And what did you do? I don't have an answer. I mean, I looked at pay slips. Fine, you looked at pay slips. What did you get? I looked at all the elements of pay. I mean, you touch your heart, you don't know what to say. What did you see in this audit? You say, I don't know what I saw in this audit. Therefore, it becomes very important for us to set the control objectives very clearly. And I'll run all of us through. I am also in the process of learning, so I can't say that I am the learned. I am also equally in the process of learning. Only maybe I have the guts to come here and talk. That's the only significant difference I can see, because we all are learning. We are all in that journey of trying to see how well we can use data analytics, and the more we talk about it, the more we share, I think the faster it will happen for us individually and faster for the profession, and it will help us to do much better jobs in our respective organizations. So I'll just hold the gun on the point of the data analytics in a payroll subject, and I'll just talk how we have looked at the data analytics as a process, and then get into examples before we wind up at 3:30. Jairam, this watch tells the time or it doesn't? It does? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Funny. Okay, anyway, we'll talk about it later. Okay, if I look at the types of data analytics, the quantitative data, the categorical data, and the qualitative data that one has in the organization. The quantitative data, the process for us is to data clean. The point that I keep saying is that unless and until we don't clean the data that we have, any amount of data that you put into your query or into your control objective or into idea for giving us results is only going to make our job more difficult after we've got the results from the system. So please spend more time in making sure that the data that we've put into, or we are telling the idea tool to sort of correlate and pick up the data from that database and run the test that we want it to, make sure that data is clean, that those data don't come with, somewhere it comes with Mr. Suppose there is a name of a person, somewhere it comes with a Mr., somewhere it comes with a name, somewhere with a surname. Make sure that all that data is cleaned up well. Figures don't come with starting with a 0, otherwise it probably reads it like something else, and then you get up into making, then you find that the results that you get don't actually predict or don't in fact typify what the reality is. The data quality, we have to be very careful to make sure. I'm sure there was a session also on data extraction from the system itself. That's the best way, according to me, to get data, because many a time, in traditional audits, we used to go and say that please give me the data of payroll, please give me the data of all the purchase orders that you placed, please give me a data of all the vendors that you have registered in the system, please give me and so on and so forth. Please give me your price list that you have uploaded into the system. And we expected that person who has actually, if I can use the word, manipulated that data himself to give us the data. So that itself is I think a wrong process. It's a wrong start. It's a foot fault, according to me, in tennis parlance. It's a foot fault. The game doesn't progress, because you are asking the person who has actually manipulated or tampered or whatever with the data to give you the data, the base data itself. And that's where the first error is made, typically by auditors. We must never ever, of course we trust the employees, but we are also in the activity of doing audit, finding lacuna, and also to give assurance. I mean, both the roles have needed to be played. It's not possible for us to actually get the data from the auditee, and then from there in an Excel sheet, and then say that I am doing Excel, now I am going to do my analytics. We must start getting ourselves in tune to make sure we have accesses to the system, so that we are able to pick up the data from its source and not get data which is actually buttered, because whatever it may be, there is always, if somebody asks me, Arey, tell me here, what is your time span for the audit, I wish it comes out from a system, because when it comes to me, I'll say, Arey, my audit, I had 2 days problem here, let me write only, So I start using judgment to tarnish what the actual facts are, and which is not a right thing. And therefore we must get into the data quality aspects, and the only way of getting data quality aspects is to actually access the system. So that's the important thing. The good thing in my company is that we've got access to all the systems. We have a couple of systems in the company for whatever historical reasons, as Mr. Babu Gondarajan was saying. It's a 75-year-old company, so we've got issues of legacy continuing, and therefore we have different systems. But the good part is that we are in a position to have that we do have access to all the systems, which enable us to download data directly from the system, which is a very important thing. And of course, all analytics need to be done by doing control objectives. By looking at, when I am looking at a particular data, what is it that you are looking for? If I am going to do a payroll audit, what is it that you are going to look? What is it that you want to see in a payroll data? Is what we need to ask ourselves before we actually plunge into data analytics. What is it that I am trying to see in this? So I must ask very pointed questions. I am going to see if anybody joined the company on a Sunday. I am going to see if anybody has joined in the company who is below 18 years of age. I am going to see if there is anybody who has joined the company who is more than 60 years of age. I am going to see if anybody has joined the company with a basic salary of more than 60 lakhs or 10 lakhs or 6 lakhs or 4 lakhs. I must ask myself these questions, and therefore which means that we must pre-equip or fore-equip ourselves with lot of control objectives. What is it that I am going to look at in this? Then it becomes easy for scripting. Otherwise, if we simply think that we'll start scripting, what are we going to script on? Even a writer, he first thinks about the story. He has the story well etched in his mind. He knows that, this is largely what I'm going to be in for when I go. If I make a road trip from Bombay to Leh, I just don't say, chalo, should I go left or right? I know largely what I'm going to be in for. And thereafter, as it comes, I blend my reality with my plan and then deliver, So same way, in data analytics, we must be very clear what we are looking for. As the story in Alice in Wonderland, when the person came there and said, there are 2 roads to go, which one do I use? He says, where do you want to go? He says, I don't know. Then the hare says, then it really doesn't matter which you choose, because you don't know where you want to go. There are two roads. How does it matter whether you choose one over the other? Likewise, in data analytics, if our control objectives are not in place, then to my mind, and that's the way I look at life, and I'm sharing this openly with you, to my mind, I would say that if I'm not clear what I want to do, then I can only expect the results which come, and I have to be happy with that. Okay? So the lot of time we need to spend, and in our own company we have spent a lot of time in looking at which areas are amenable, so-called amenable, the low-hanging fruits, because when we buy a tool, there is a lot of, everybody looking at it, oh, something new has come into the system, oh, what are they going to do, how are they going to use it, a lot of things, oh hell, Excel only was nice, I wonder why these guys have gone and bought this tool, something must be there, Satish must be knowing DIPG, therefore it is bought, and blah, 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 blah. So it's up to us to make sure that we make sure that we get good results from this. For getting good results, unless and until we know our control objectives, my dear friends, nothing is going to happen. Clean data, meaningful data, understanding that the business of business is to do business, the business of internal auditors is internal control. So what is it that I'm going to look at the data, what is it that I want from this data analytics is going to give me my results. If this understanding is there, then it helps us to sort of get into it. These are some of the steps. See, this part of it, the data analytics as the way we, can I say, are using or strive to use, let me use the better word, strive to use, is that it must not become an ad hoc analysis. If Sharma does, he will look at these 5 analyses. If Verma does, then he will look at some 6 more, which might not necessarily include all the 5 that Sharma did. Then the question comes to me is, if Sharma did 5 and Verma did 6, why did Sharma not do the 6th one? Then he says, no, what Sharma? Sharma did 5, I did another 6. Sharma, he doesn't know anything. That means, according to me, I have 11 control objectives, 5 of Sharma and 6 of Verma. Make both of them do all 11, no? You get it? I paused deliberately. Get the Sharma and Verma together. Data analytics helps us for removing this ad hocism, because if I use this data analytics and do these control objectives uniformly, then whether Verma goes to my Kansbahal plant and Sharma goes to my Mysore plant and both of them do purchases, I know that both Sharma and Verma did what the company wanted them to do. Got it? Therefore, this ad hocism is a bane till we kill it. And through data analytics, my humble opinion is that we must remove this ad hocism. We must be very clear that in case, and of course I am not saying that we should straitjacket everything that we do in life, because then life becomes boring. We can't straitjacket everything. At 8 o'clock I will get up and 4 o'clock I will do this and 6 o'clock I will have tea and not have coffee and not have, it's not possible. Okay, so we can't straitjacket anything in life. The moment anything comes new, increase the control objectives. If a 12th item comes into play, then make sure that from now on at least, forget the past here. We can't live in the past, we have to live in the future. We have to make sure our present helps us to take us into the future much better. And therefore forget about the past. If you have been doing 11 control objectives in the past and the 12th one emerges, pick that 12th one, and from today onwards we will do 12 control objectives. That is the reason why I will say this ad hocism thing is important. Repeatable. What is repeatable? Today, if we say the cost of processing each transaction should be so low, that is why many companies have gone in for outsourcing, right? Because what was felt, why did we give our payables outside? Why did we give so much of our activities to be done outside? We have done this because we felt that for repeatable task, it is better to give it to a person who specializes in that repeatable task. He will do it faster, he will do it better, he will bring uniformity, and he will do it at a lower cost. For an audit, if I look at my own transaction costs of doing my own audits, to the extent that I know that some task is being repeatable, my excellence or the way I would look at it would be that if I am able to automate this, if I am able to bring it into some sort of an automable, some sort of a platform which will then automate this particular process for me, then my repeatable task, I don't have to throw intelligence every time that task has to be done. For repeatable tasks, you don't have to go on using your intelligence. Don't waste your intelligence for repeatable tasks. Repeatable task is something which you will do without any worry. If I have to breathe, I don't have to think, should I breathe or not? Should I breathe, take a deep breath or should I take a mild breath? Nothing. If the oxygen is left, automatically the body understands you better take a deep breath. If you run, automatically body understands. You don't have to think, it's a reflex action. In reflex action, you don't need to throw intelligence. And the data analytics is the method, to my mind, to make sure that for repeatable tasks, we leave them where they are done on a repetitive basis. Those tools do this analysis time and in and out. Every time we do a payroll audit, we know the routines that we need to run. At least those tests are getting covered. Okay, and then make our teams or make our people learn or to do different things which will help us for making sure that the function gives better results. Centralized versus decentralized, this is I think a story of our time, that whether it has to be done centralized, whether it has to be decentralized, views and counter views are there, whether one set of people only should do data analytics and all others will watch the fun. Strong views for, strong views against, but whatever works, boss. I think let's not try to sermonize, let me not try to sermonize on any particular view. Whatever works, so whatever you feel that is working for you, make sure it is caught and done well, right? And continuous monitoring, I dare say that we are, at least my company in L&T, we are one step away from continuous monitoring. I said this 8-9 months back, but I continue to be that one step behind. I am saying this openly, but we must get into continuous monitoring, because continuous monitoring will help us to plan our audits better. How nice it will be if in the morning when I come to office, I know which were the topmost 5 purchase orders that were placed in my company yesterday. How nice it will be if I come to know that my corporation bank account in Nariman Point had the maximum cash outflow yesterday, or my state bank account in Hyderabad had the maximum deposit yesterday. How good it would be if I know this. Do we as auditors ever come to know this on a live system? I don't know. I mean, I'm asking myself. I've never seen this in my live environment, and therefore I am very buoyant about continuous monitoring. People are here, experts are here on continuous monitoring. We can talk about it offline, but I'm not here for talking about that right now. I'm just saying, as continuous monitoring, look at the credit card business. How did the credit card business, you see the way they have changed from a system where they had a hot list, a black list, black, or they call it a blacklist or something. So whenever you swiped a card, he would look at one big book which would tell him that these were the hot list cards and therefore he should not swipe. And today you see, it's just done online. There's an authorization, and you sort of make the transaction is passed through. You don't have to submit bills to get your money as a merchandiser. You don't have to keep those slips. You get the money next day instantly. As a user of credit cards, see how the industry has run. We get, before I sign the charge slip, before any one of us sign the charge slip, we get a beep on our mobile saying that not only mobile, email, female, whatever, you get 10 messages, you think, oh shucks, I hope it's not 10 times the card is swiped, But 10 times the mobile will buzz. So if you see, the credit card industry has taken these control monitoring, I call them control monitoring tools, you let them call it what they want. I call them control monitoring tools because they have instantly come to know, if you swipe a card for 10 lakhs or 5 lakhs somewhere, and immediately they come on the line and ask you that did you swipe a card for this much value. So it's as instant as that. But we auditors yet want to continue to live maybe in the past. And continuous monitoring, now I just gave 4 or 5 examples. But if we start using this tool intelligently and start asking ourselves, and we get this data on a live pattern, that how many times in this year that State Bank of Hyderabad had the largest credits, So it tells me, arey yaar, in this company, a lot of money is coming in my State Bank of Hyderabad. What happens? When I pick up my bank reconciliation routines, I need to pick up State Bank of Hyderabad by a mile. Not by sampling and thinking about, oh, should I start with H or should I start with P or should that letter include this or should it be a 7-digit number which I pick up or a 12-digit number? It's not important at all. Your intelligence, internal intelligence has already told you that State Bank of Hyderabad is the place where the company is getting the maximum receipts, and out of 90 days, it was in the top 3 for the last 45 days. And you can keep on asking these system to keep on giving us such type of, intelligent, on the spot answers or data on internal control issues. And that's where I feel that this continuous monitoring tool, once the data analytics is become very sharp in the company, will be able to, sort of take us to a different level from where we are. And the faster the profession of internal audit moves into this type of thinking, the easier it will be to survive. I am not talking about excelling. I am talking about survival. The faster we are able to understand that business is so dynamic, the requirements of business is so high, that business wants us to sort of, be with them. Okay, be with them means be in sync with what they are doing, but they concentrate on business and our business is to concentrate on internal control. So these are some of the steps and my views on each one of these sort of points. Okay, I leave this particular slide. Maybe it's too mundane for a group like this. Okay, let me now come to 10 to 3. Okay, let me now come to the payroll. Now, if I see a typical quality of a fraudster or a quality of fraudster, there is enough material available in the net talking about generally who these people who tend to do frauds are. They're typically young, they're typically people who are always available in office, they don't take leave, they don't, they're always available, they are result oriented. You just give them a task and sometimes even at the cost of process, the task is completed. So there are a lot of task, there are a lot of result orientation rather than process orientation. Very result oriented people who focus on the results, who want to achieve something. They always, you'll find them in a very vibrant type of mode of things, or they could be other extremes, they could be recluses, they would just be to themselves, not talking to people, a recluse. Or they would be a person who will mingle with everybody and be always the man Friday. If you want any work to be done, just give it to him. Any outside department will only talk to him because he always has an answer for everything. He's liked by the people around and things like that. So when we looked at payroll, if typically when I say that I want to, now I have a bunch of, suppose in my company, I have a bunch of 50,000 employees that need to be paid. What do I do? Where do I start? What will I do? I mean, if I have 50,000 people, there are 20 different pay items that have to be there. There are another maybe 60 different grades that the company has, and it goes on and on and on. And in the month of July, some people get moved from one grade to the other, and then what happens? So what do I do? What is it that I am going to do? So what we have done is that we have as I told you, we have made those control objectives. What is it that I am going to see in a payroll? Are people like merging the attendance record, trying to find out people who have never gone on leave? Is it a sin not to go on leave? It's not a sin not to go on leave. It could be a false positive. I mean, the guy could go on leave or not go on leave for say last 3 years. So what? Nothing wrong about it. But at least on that parameter, out of 50,000, you only are left with some 45 people or 30 people or 25 people or maybe 1. So if it is 1, then it's a deep red condition for you to make sure whether it's a false positive or there is really a problem. Why has he not gone on leave? They keep saying, if you ask a question 5 times why, you will get the true answer. Why are you late? Because the train was late. why was the train late? Because of something and something and something. Then you will ultimately know that actually you had got up late, that employee had got, or the person had got up late. So 5 times you ask why, you come to the truth. So if you ask these questions, that if you find one person in it, then you know that there must be something. At least it gives us an indication that we must look at this particular employee a little more. There are 50,000 employees. Salaries have been paid for 12 months in the year. So 50,000 into 12, those many pay items are there. Draw a trend line between, for a particular employee, how those trends have moved, If you see peaks and spurts, suppose it is in the month of July, you know that your peak should be, you may have got an increment of maximum 20% or whatever, depending on your company norms. I mean, I don't want to give a number and try to make a mockery out of it, but I'm just trying to say that you know your company too well, you know what those increment numbers could be, you know which months it is being paid, and when you use the tool to run through all those 50,000 employees for 12 months and draw a trend line about how each of those employees got paid, and tell me the ones which deviated over some particular range, which you have to use your own intelligence, which each one of us have to use our own intelligence to tell that whether 20 for this company, 30 for the other company. If I am a consulting guy, then 20 I may use for one company, 40 I may use for an IT company, and so on and so forth. But whatever is going to be the range, and tell me the ones which are outside this particular range. Who are the outliers? Please tell me. From that, I get a set of things that I can actually, what am I creating? I am creating my work which I have to do physically when I am on the field. And all this, mind you, I am doing it well before I am actually gone to the field, gone to the battlefield. These are all the strategy that I am doing in my boardroom before I actually enter the so-called battle. I never call an audit a battle, but I am just saying that before I actually step on to the field, I am actually working out my strategy on what is it that I want to see. If I have to answer my management that you went and did the payroll, what is it that you checked? So I can tell him that I checked, sir, that there were no employee who has not gone on leave for 3 months, which tells me blah 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 blah. Controlled way in which he will issue material. There is a controlled way where he will give materials free. There is a controlled way in which he will give material only after collecting money, and so on and so forth. So every guy in the company is an internal auditor. And like this, even the HR person says that every employee is an HR employee, every employee is an IR employee. But that's the beauty of life, that we are obviously required to play multifaceted roles. I can't be playing one role in the company. We need to play multifaceted roles, and this is exactly the part of it. Cadre-wise boundary controls, that if I know that for one particular manager level in my company, the maximum pay, net pay or whatever pay cannot exceed say X lakhs, then I need to build in these boundary controls. And for any reason, if somebody has been paid, because for some extreme reason he's been paid, at least you look at those. When we go for audit, I'm not trying to say that by doing data analytics we don't have to go to the field at all. We need to go to the field, but with deep pockets, not with stashed with money, but with stashed with significant useful information which will help us to strike directly at the question. Even it has a positive impact, since we are talking about impact of idea in our environment. If you see, it has an impact as an auditor you make on the auditee, because he says, wow, yeah, last time this fellow came and he started asking, Acha, how is this payroll process, how you all are making payroll, how you all are getting attendance, how you all did this, how you all did that. And typically from internal auditors, if Sharma and Verma go, next audit Sharma is not there, Verma is not there. Even if he is there, don't send him here. Last time only he had gone, send somebody. So again that new fellow goes and says, how you all make payment? Oh, we make payment like this. It's not done, because you are wasting his time, and we are also looking very, not the most intelligent people in the company. Therefore, if we have this intelligence, or if we are equipped with this intelligence, that these are the areas where my issues do lie, then it helps me to bring a right focus into doing that particular activity. employees receiving mutually exclusive benefits. If I have company accommodation, I must not get house rent allowance, which is a allowance given to me because I have not taken company house. So there are many, if I get conveyance allowances, then I should not have had taken the benefit of the company car or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I mean, in your own companies, in our own company, we'll have such huge list of mutually exclusive benefits, employee benefits, that if I get this, then I'm not entitled for this. If I get that, then I'm not entitled for this. And therefore, we must be able to match these and make sure that if tell the system intelligently, we must ask the question, as I keep saying and telling my teams, we must ask the question in English and idea must tell us the numbers. I must ask in English. I must not try to make my question into figures and try to tell me what percentage, nothing. I must ask a simple English question. Tell me how many employees in this company are having housing accommodation but got HRA. This is an English question. All of us can ask this question in English. Somebody who understands idea then should script this. Once it is scripted, according to me, from an ad hoc, it moves into repeatable. Once it is come in the repeatable area, we need not employ our intelligence, because we use our intelligence very, very scarcely, unfortunately. Starting with me and ending with me, let me say. I use my intelligence very sparingly. Why I should do intelligence? Let me behave like this one. Let me not use my intelligence. Therefore, in line with that, we must use our intelligence somewhere else, because I have already succeeded in making one ad hoc task repeatable. Then move to the next one, and move to the next one, and move to the next one, such a way that we, at the end of the audit, we have a huge list of things which help us give an assurance to the management. What did you do in the payroll audit? Now I can talk. These are the things, sir, that I did in the payroll audit, and I can very proudly look eye to eye with you, as I am doing now to this camera, say that, sir, I looked at the data and everything is clean. And everything is clean. I have an assurance that these are the 10 things that I physically did in this audit, which tells me that the data is clean. I am talking positively, and since it's my company, my data, that's a fact. So I am talking positively. I am saying that I looked at these things, and everything was under control. I got deviations, but the deviations had a valid reason. I am not saying that there weren't deviations. There were deviations, but the deviations, and I am able to do this very quickly. I am able to pick up the deviations quickly. I am able to pointedly ask the questions or focus my time that I spend at the location very fruitfully, very intelligently, very focused, very pointed, looking at only those particular aspects when I actually go there. Then there are a whole host of them, people having common PAN numbers. How can two employees have the same PAN number? Seems to be a problem. Some of them can get fixed by looking at making changes in the system. Therefore, if this, first of all, same PAN number should not have been allowed in the system. Very easy answer. But it was, for whatever reasons, right or wrong, they were allowed to make, for some reason, somebody must have said, "Nay, allow them for this reason, that reason." And later on that control must not have got reinstated, and now it is open, and it is evidence, proof of the pudding is in the eating. There were two employees who had the same PAN number, if at all. Therefore, having common PAN numbers can be picked up. It is impossible that two distinct employees can have the same PAN number. Pick up those PAN numbers. Two different employees having the same salary account number. How is that possible? I mean, how can it ever happen that there are two employees in a company which actually share a bank account? Not possible. That means there is some nexus, or there is some error, or God knows what. Even an error, I will say no, because it has to have happened because if nothing else, as employees, at least we will see the credit in our salary account, at least in our own salary account. Even if we don't look at the bank accounts of the company, at least our own salary credit account will see, and if I know that the money hasn't come, I'm going to take it up with my payroll that why the hell I didn't get salary this month. And then it will be proved that it went to somebody else's account, and therefore you will correct it. So any salary account, two employees or two or more employees having the same salary account will give us this. PAN verification, there are various ways in which we can check the PAN verification methods, so we can do all that. We can even look at the PAN number versus the website to find out whether it's the same name which is registered under the income tax website. So there are ways of looking at this. Whether terminated employees or separated employees, people either who have left the company, separated employees, whether they have access to the system for any reason, right or wrong. So we can look at which were the separations this month. See, the idea is that if we start asking these questions in plain English, without any funda of idea, IT, SAP, nothing is required. It's only your audit acumen, it's only our audit acumen which is going to play the role. Then of course, to get answers for this, we need a tool, and therefore whatever tool that we are actually using. But the tool is a fool. The tool just sits there and looks at you. You must be able to get the excitement to the tool, and we must be able to sort of make sure that it is done. Now if I come to the other two parts which I'll be talking about before we wind up, is on procurement and vendor masters. Okay. On the procurement side, obviously there are issues around the purchase request creation. I'm largely talking about a SAP environment, a PR requisition, a PO creation, issues on segregation of duty on it, that is there any person in the company who has the right to create PRs, to approve PRs, to approve the purchase orders, to also approve the payment. Is there any ID in the company, or is there any user in the company who has a full view of the transaction from the time it starts up to the time it ends? And if anybody in the company has this, then obviously it's an SOD issue. There are various other tools also available in the market like GRC and others, which actually run the SOD conflict, or bring out the SOD conflicts in a very intelligent way. Compliance with any company guidelines, that means the values for each PO, who has got the value to approve what type of purchase orders. Is there any cases of people splitting, which I talked about it before, by stratifying on the value of the purchase order and then dovetailing it or matching it with my company guidelines about who can authorize what? And if I see that there is a pattern, that if the value of a particular level is 30 lakhs, and I find a lot of purchase orders being placed in the range of 25 to 29 lakhs 99,000 blah blah blah, it tells me a tale. It tells me that there is something which is making these people issue larger than adequate or larger than normal number of purchase orders in this particular band, which is not an appropriate thing. There could be genuine things also, and there could be, but at least it is an area for us to dive deep into and look very specifically at those type of areas. Then there could be some suggestion when we see that a procurement has happened more than the purchase requisition value, then there could be some observations made by audit on actually making sure that the system doesn't allow any purchase orders or any purchase orders to be, or any procurement with purchase order being made in excess of the PR quantities. And then there could be tolerance. I mean, people could say that exactly I am not able to procure, I will require some tolerance of some percentage. So you can build in these tolerances in the system itself. So by doing a quick data analytics on the entire procurement or the entire purchase cycle, I am in a position to even bring out one-time corrections. It's not that every month I will run and every time I will tell the management about the deviations. Many times we see that when these deviations are pointed out, it requires only a one-time correction in the system, which helps us to sort of make sure that the issue that is being raised by the auditor gets its own redressal. Material rate variances. Now, if I go for an audit, typically I look at the purchases that are made by that unit itself. if we move away from this and we use data analytics properly, there are different ways in which we are in a position to look at, for this particular material, what is my Coimbatore unit buying it at? What is my Faridabad unit buying it at? What is my Nagpur unit buying it at? What is my Akola unit buying it at? What is my Aurangabad plant buying it at? Or what are the set of buyers at that place using the same material code? At what rates are they buying it? What is the credit terms that we are offering to them? And all these things many times gives us a lot of surprises. There could be genuine reasons. He says that this is local conditions and therefore it is like this and like that. But at least it gives us scare that there is somebody in the company who is not only just looking at my rates and asking me, what happened and did I have 3 quotes and 4 quotes and all those things. But he is intelligently looking at the rate at which I bought it and comparing it very seamlessly and continuously and every time comparing it with somebody else who has bought it probably more efficiently than me or had reasons for deviating. So this gives a better sense of control. That is why I say the business of internal audit is internal control. It's not the business. I mean, the issue is of internal control. You could have bought it at less price, you could have bought it at more price, that's not the issue. But I am having a benchmark and a means for me to tell me, looking beyond my shoulder and telling me how my peers are performing. And data analytics has helped us in in a huge way, in a huge way to sort of bring about all these rate, these material variations that we can see. Okay. Open purchase orders is another bane that is there, at least in the companies that I have been associated with in my short career. I've seen that there are a lot of purchase orders which are kept open for whatever reasons, and at many times it becomes, sometimes the rates have fallen because of the the falling trend of prices. But there are purchase orders which are at a higher rate, which are open, which is the vendor is in a position if he wishes to do deliveries against it. So open purchase orders can be very easily picked up from IDEA or ACL or whatever, can be easily picked up from the data extraction, and it can be presented appropriately. Vendor wise analysis, which vendor is getting what amounts, who is getting more pie of the business. Nothing wrong if somebody is even getting 100% of the pie. There is absolutely no internal control issue in that, provided all the steps are followed. Why a particular party or for a particular material, why was it bought 100% from a particular vendor is properly followed. So there is no internal control issue on those things. Big orders to new vendors, again a beautiful point for my continuous monitoring mechanism. Which was the vendor which was created in the last 1 month but got orders over 5 lakhs. Every day in the morning I get a pop-up that this was a vendor which was created in the last 30 days and an order of 25 lakhs was placed on him immediately. So how does it sort of sync with the purchasing practices or the purchasing philosophy that is prevailing in my company? That do we have a philosophy of straight away giving large values to a particular vendor, or do we try to test him and then say that okay, we are going to buy only some amount of you first you deliver, you make sure that, so it's a philosophy. But it's possible for us to test it if we use some of these in our continuous monitoring mechanism. Okay, procurement against deleted requisitions if at all possible. Answer many times should come no, that means it's not possible, but at least it gives me that after looking at the data and a huge amount of data, it tells me that it is not possible. So I know that the intended control which the company had actually intended to keep is also working. At least one of the ways of looking at it, that I looked at 9 months data, I looked at 12 months data, and this is what my result came, and therefore I can tell with conviction that at least in the last 12 months there has been no such case of whatever, depending on what particular test that has been done. Many times purchase order dates before delivery dates, because you get delivery dates somewhere captured in some system or the other. You get the purchase order date, so it tells us how many purchase orders were actually regularization purchase orders and not purchase orders made and thereafter material was delivered. There could be urgency, but it helps us to bring about process improvements, because the more this happens, the lesser internal control is being exercised on that particular transaction. Because if I get material in my company without a valid purchase order, then there is apparently something wrong in the way that I am actually doing this purchasing part. Because ideally, and truly speaking, first the purchase order should be there, then the material should come. But I know that life doesn't move in these steps so easily, but how much of it is really happening under the garb of it being, sometimes it becomes the rule. And then when you look at the data and say that out of all your purchases, there was one unit which was doing it maximum, then you can at least get benchmarks. So we also know the theory of comparative cost advantage. What is the theory of comparative cost advantage? That even if you are the best, even if the theory of comparative cost advantage says that even if you are operating at the lowest cost, there will always be a competitor, or if I look at my pattern of my cost elements, and if I compare it with my next guy who's the next cost to me, next higher cost to me, in one or the other parameter, I will find that he is operating at a better cost structure than me. And this becomes an opportunity for the person who is the best to improve. So how can he improve? By looking at that particular element of cost which somebody else, though he is number 2, he is doing better than me. And by improving or making sure that that cost of element is actually benchmarked with him, I make sure that my good becomes better. And which is why all these things become very important. Common names, common addresses, PAN numbers, banks of vendors, do they have the same test that we applied in payroll? That do they have the same bank account? 2 different vendors, do they have the same bank account? Do they have the same PAN? Do they have the same TAN? Do they have the same address? Frequent changes in vendors or contracting banking accounts. Frequently change. This month it was this bank, next month it was another bank, third month. So when I look at all my vendors in this whole year, I'll say there were 5 vendors who changed the bank account 12 times in the year. Is it not strange? Is it not funny? Does it not be worth a second look? It does. This is where I would say that we should be able to ask intelligent questions to the system in pure plain English and expect the system to give us these type of answers, that in your database there were 12 people in the 12 vendors who changed their bank account 12 times in the year. So all we need to do is find out what were the circumstances, and you will also know that they were all from Raebareli. That means still worse, some particular place in India. So it all happened in that particular area. That means there is something that must have happened. The more, as I said, the second why, the third why, the fourth why will get us closer and closer and closer and closer to the root cause. Oh shucks, this happened or what? That probably will come in your third or fourth or fifth why. That, oh, this is what happened. So why 5 vendors? Oh, this is the. Which were the vendors? Oh, they were from this place. Oh, they were from this business. Oh, they were from here. Oh God, this is what happened. Oh hell, cheated. All this will happen only if we start asking the system to throw us out these exceptions. So our business of, what is our business? Business is internal control. So this is exactly the point that I would talk about business control, about internal control. The other point is about any vendors being created or like an employee being created on a Sunday holiday. Take care that there are, companies are having wide global operations. Somewhere Friday is a holiday. So obviously we have units which have work on Sundays. They have Thursday off because of their power situation in the country. They have a staggered off. So make sure that you are in sync with all those ground realities. But vendors being created on odd days, vendors being created at 10 o'clock in the night, suspicious. Then why the hell you created a vendor at 10 in the night when your whole work hour is from X to Y? Why did you create it at unusual hours? So this becomes not a false positive. I mean, it could become a false positive. Probably there was a second shift that they added, there was a backlog or whatever. But at least it gives you some different angle. Why was there a backlog? the first instinct thing, no, there was a backlog. Why there was a backlog? Why, what process did not happen that, vendors didn't get created when it had ought to be created, and why was there a backlog? Who has authorized this backlog? So we may get as auditors a little different angle, a little different thought to chew upon, which helps us to do a better type of an all-round job. So vendors without addresses obviously needs to a one-time correction to make sure that all new vendors which are created do not sort of have these things. The last part I would want to touch before I wind up would be about the masters. We all know how important masters are, be it the tax master, be it the price master, be it the vendor master, be it the whatever employee master, and so on and so forth. But around the masters also, we can do a lot of cross checking. Any employee having a bank account, same as a vendor bank account, then it tells us a tale that he's a fool if he does it. One is that he should not have been a vendor and an employee as well without disclosing it, and if he has not disclosed it, he was a fool to have given the same bank account. But every as they say, every fraudster leaves a trail, and this could be the trail that was not getting picked up in the system. But if we start asking intelligent cross patterning data, we could probably get into cases where we will find that there are employees who are having the same employee and a vendor having the same bank account. Dramatic increase or decrease in number of invoices from contractor or vendors. If we draw a pattern line, how many invoices were raised by this vendor to us, or vice versa, it probably will give us a tale about why this vendor suddenly has become important, what type of capability is there, and so on and so forth. Many times we may be barking at the wrong tree, but at least we barked. That's the idea, and barked in a shrill voice for the correct reason. Otherwise, barking we can always do, but I'm saying we barked for the right reasons. Maybe the result, never mind. It didn't come out as this thing. And working in a company like L&T, many times we have to bark, but we find that things are under control, which apparently did not look. But at least it gives us an assurance to tell the management that yes, these things are under control, and I myself have a reasonable assurance to say this. Before I say that yes, things are okay, I must myself get convinced. And how can I get convinced? I can get convinced only if I am able to prove to myself, forget about anybody else, if I am able to prove to myself that these were the tests that I did, these were the things that I did, and therefore I find that there has been no sort of deviations. It's an assurance that I am giving to the management, and I strongly feel that our job is not only to point out mistakes, but also give an assurance to the management as and when called for that that things are perfectly okay,